I'm going to call the East Lansing City Council meeting of Tuesday, August 13, 2019 to order. Hope everybody has had a good summer so far and has the rest of their summer pretty good. Would you call the roll, please, Mr. Clerk?
Councilmember Byer?
Here.
Councilmember Draheim?
Here.
Councilmember Stevens? Here. Mayor Pro Tem Olson?
Here.
Mayor Meadows?
Here. Next item on our agenda is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilmember Draheim, seconded by Councilmember Byer. Any changes? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on our agenda is approval of the minutes of the July 16, 2019 regular meeting. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by the Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Councilmember Draheim. Any changes? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on our agenda is an announcement, actually. The written communications that were received by council are posted on the online agenda packet. If you are interested in any of those, you can check them out right there. I also mentioned that I know that we had a number of communications come into us that somehow didn't make it to us, let me put it that way. But I think all of those have been accumulated and have been placed in the online packet at this point in time. Next item on our agenda is communications from persons in the audience. This is a time set aside for any member of the audience to talk about anything on the agenda or off the agenda. And I don't have any cards that are filled out, but there's a blue card up there. If anybody is interested in addressing council on any item on or off the agenda, please just step up to the microphone, fill out the blue card, and introduce yourself and go for it. You don't have to fill it out before you speak, okay?
Thank you. My name is Richard Llewellyn, and I've been delivering for Grubhub since August of 2018. The proliferation of all these independent contractor delivery services has been congesting the alleys in East Lansing, so Pace has begun ticketing them for parking in the alley to pick up deliveries. I dispute that that can be legally done. That's the purpose that alleys served, is to give access to commercial vehicles. But number one, I would like to request, I don't know the process, that the initial tax allocation for the city of East Lansing to purchase, pave, and maintain these alleys be provided to me. I couldn't find it in 2 trips to 2 different law libraries. It's the foundation of East Lansing's responsibilities for and authority over these alleyways. And if it's specified that they continue to be used for access for commercial vehicles for the businesses located along that alley, it's my understanding that can't be prohibited at a later time. The East Lansing City Charter also guarantees reasonable ingress and egress to the businesses located in East Lansing, which I believe would also apply in this situation. I also would like to make 2 proposals that could ease the congestion. Number one, Michigan State University allows clearly marked delivery vehicles to park in a metered parking space for free for up to 10 minutes as long as they leave their blinkers on to facilitate deliveries. And if East Lansing could do something like that for more like 30 minutes because it takes longer to pick up a delivery, many of the drivers would prefer to park in a conventional parking space than deal with alley congestion anyways. This will be a very big problem when the students come back. Another possibility is that delivery drivers be allowed to purchase a debit card, whatnot, that would allow them to park in a city parking lot for up to 30 minutes. They could be good for 1 month, 6 months, a year for a nominal fee, which would again ease the congestion within the alleys while still giving them reasonable access to the businesses. Once the students come back, it's going to be impossible to find a parking space anywhere near these businesses.
Go ahead.
Is Grubhub marked on your vehicle?
Yes.
It is?
All right, any other questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, I have one more quick question. So the congestion, you would say, is the reason why you think this is, were tickets being given out beforehand and now it's recent because of the congestion?
I assume that's the reason. They've only recently begun ticketing vehicles. I did receive a parking ticket. I got the ticket thrown out because my vehicle is a commercial vehicle
Sure.
by the state of Michigan definition, and I can find no narrower definition within the East Lansing City ordinance.
So just,
But that just solves the ticket problem, but not the underlying issue of Pace continues to tell us that we cannot utilize the alley to make pickups.
right, no, and that makes complete sense. I just, one more follow-up question. So is the congestion such that you're having an issue maneuvering throughout that alley?
Sometimes. I mean, big delivery vehicles, when they're making a delivery, obviously they block the entire alley.
Right.
We can't use it. But even if they're not blocking the alley, sometimes there's 3 or more delivery vehicles making a pickup to nearby businesses. So even if they're smaller vehicles, they don't have someplace where they can pull over to allow other vehicles to get through the alley. So you get a bit of a traffic jam there.
Right.
We would prefer not to be in the alley to have to deal with the congestion. The city of East Lansing would prefer we're not in the alleys.
Sure.
But in order to stay out of the alley, we need to be given a reasonable alternative.
Right.
And parking 3 blocks away is not really a reasonable alternative, which
Right.
is probably about as close of a parking space as you're going to find.
Go ahead.
Can I ask a quick follow-up too? So if you're talking about meter spaces or even garages, I mean, so for some of those businesses, I would have to assume some of the businesses that you're doing pickup for, probably a lot of them are actually Grand River facing businesses. So meter spaces on some of the side streets and back streets, they're not always right there. I mean, it might be a block away. Is that proximate enough that you would actually utilize those if that was available?
Yes, obviously. There are some spaces that you can park in for 15 minutes for free. They're quite often full, but if not, the alleyway, the nearest alley space is the best place to make a pickup, even if the business isn't actually on that alley.
Okay.
That would be a problem with Pace, obviously.
Have you been able to utilize those 15-minute loading zone spaces that are on Abbott Road? Or do you just find that they're always taken?
No, over the summer, they're usually free, and that's almost always adequate. But once the students come back, that's an entirely different situation. It's always going to be clogged. There's not going to be free parking space available for delivery vehicles. If we're making a pickup on a specific alley and we're going to be ticketed for it, that's a problem.
Okay, any other questions? All right, I'll just say, prepare to come back. Because we'll put this on a discussion only, and we'll get some more information from parking, and maybe we can talk about how we could create a permit system to allow this to happen a lot more smoothly, okay?
Yeah, students are coming back, and time is kind of of the essence. As for my request to be provided with the original tax allocation document for the city of East Lansing to purchase, pave, and maintain these alleyways, how would I proceed with that?
We can just ask staff to get that to you.
Okay.
Make sure that you give us an address and a phone number on that blue card, and that's the way they'll get a hold of you, okay?
Thank you.
All right, thanks a
Thanks.
lot. Anybody else at this time?
Sorry, I'm going to read from my
Sure.
phone, if you don't mind. My name is Michael Mansour, General Manager of Spartan Spirits Liquor. Spartan Spirits opened in August of '91, started by my father, John Mansour. When my dad opened, he saw opportunity in the city of East Lansing, not only to provide for his family, but to provide for the community. He saw a need. It was not an easy road, especially in the beginning. Many long days and nights were had by members of my family to make it all work. But the defining part of our success is the joy and the rapport we build with our customers. That ideal gets passed down to the different generations of students and community members, in turn helping the success of our business. In 28 years, we've maintained a good relationship with the city, the police, and the people of East Lansing. To my knowledge, we've maintained proper licensing all these years and never tried to operate without. We've succeeded despite obstacles such as the opening of CVS, the constant rise in rent, and intermittent sting operations by the city and state. As I found out Target was going to join the community, I must admit I was a bit worried. I found some relief, though, in knowing that no Target, at least not in the Lansing area, carried liquor. Immediately after the Target opened, I was informed by several vendors that this Target location has a liquor section. This came as a huge surprise to me considering we have 2 liquor stores within a half mile of the Target. I'm aware that the half-mile rule has been lifted, but never guessed Target would be approved for a liquor license because of Jonah's and Spartan Spirits. This reduces the need. We braced for impact, expecting Target to come in with wine and beer, but liquor, again, this drastically reduces the need. I grew up in this store and learned many critical lessons by doing so. Spartan Spirits has supported 2 generations with an honest living. With the Target gaining a liquor license, I'm afraid my kids will not have the same privilege. They will not have the opportunity to grow with this community and obtain many business and life lessons as a result. The City of East Lansing has made small business virtually impossible by bringing in big business such as Target. It seems that we are the last of a dying breed. I feel that Target has many other avenues for income. I don't feel a liquor license is necessarily needed for their success.
Okay, I just want to mention one thing, and I'll ask Mr. Yaden to weigh in on this. The city has a SUP process for what are SDD and SDM licenses, but under state law, we have nothing. We cannot say no to an SDM or an SDD license because state statute does not permit it. In fact, the Liquor Control Commission issues them, not us. You know, it's not like a Class C license that goes into a restaurant that we have some control over. Well, we did institute years ago a SUP process, but it's a very minimal process because, again, we're limited by state law. And basically it says you got to comply with the law, and if you don't, then we can, eliminate the SUP, which gives us a little bit of control over the operation. You were in existence before that. Actually, that law was actually passed by us, so it doesn't even apply to you. But if I've misstated where we're at on this, Mr. Yaden, I'd like you to just explain how the city really just doesn't have any control over it.
You've stated it exactly correctly.
Just for people's benefit, could you say what those acronyms are that you were just...
Are you kidding me? I have no idea, but there are 2 different type of licenses. Some are just beer and wine licenses, some allow the sale of liquor, and one of them is for that, and one of it is for the other, but those are party store licenses, or gas station licenses, or licenses that would go into a grocery store. So those are the type of licenses that we have zero control over. We tried to institute some control through this SUP process, but it's not a great process. It just gives us a little bit of control. So I feel badly for you on this, but the city didn't issue any license to Target. Those are issued by the Liquor Control Commission.
Right. I just fear that it's going to take us out, unfortunately.
Well, I hope that's not the case, and I'm buying all my booze from you now.
I always...
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anybody else? All right. The next item on the agenda is communications from council members. Councilmember Stevens, you want to start off?
Yeah, so I just wanted to make a quick note on an ordinance 1467, ban on conversion therapy, that I introduced at our last meeting. It went to our Human Relations Commission, which gave it a full and unanimous recommendation. So I am looking forward to having that on the agenda for September 10th, which is our next business meeting, for a formal vote to hopefully get that passed on the table for City Council.
Anything else?
Nothing.
Shannon, anything?
Just 2 things. One, I just want to give a little shout out that coming up here very soon, we are going to be having another set of brand new elementary schools opening. This is, I think, a really exciting development for our community. They are coming together, and we are going to have kids in new buildings and new classrooms, and I think it's just something that we as a community should be really proud of. The other thing I just wanted to mention is coming up this fall, the city has been partnering with Community Mental Health of Clinton, Eaton, and Ingham County with a group of us who have been working on some potential community conversations around mental health and particularly suicide prevention. East Lansing has been impacted by a couple recent suicides of former East Lansing high school graduates, and it's been a struggle, I think, within some of that community. The high school is really doing some great things with a high school mental health committee, and this is going to be a set of conversations coming up this fall. The first one is September 18th at 6 p.m. It's at the library. The series is called East Lansing Talks About Mental Health and Wellness. There's a press release out today. We're going to be sharing more information. It'll be out on social media. I really encourage people to attend with yourselves, your children of appropriate age, probably middle school up. It will be a heavy topic, obviously, but I think this is a really important conversation and something that that many communities wrestle with, and I'm really glad to see this partnership underway.
Could you repeat the time?
Yeah, it is September 18th, 6 p.m. That's a Wednesday, 6 p.m. at the library. There are going to be 2 others in October and November as well, and we'll kind of announce those as they get closer, but that first one is there.
Yeah, you want to mention the HRC conversation that's coming up? Okay.
So one more thing really quick. Thank you, Mayor Meadows, for reminding me. The Human Relations Commission has been doing, or has just recently started, hosting coffee and conversations. It's along the same lines of some of our panels that we've been doing previously on race relations and immigration issues. Our first one was held last month, and it was a really good turnout. These are meant as informal conversations around topics regarding protected classes within the city. So that could be race, religion, immigration status, student status, LGBTQIA issues, and a number of other things. Our next one is going to be held on the 18th of this month from 1 to 3 p.m. at the Espresso Royale Coffee. That's 1500 West Lake Lansing Road. That topic is going to be around hate crimes. This is a very pointed topic right now, and I think it's very important that we are talking about this within the community. We've seen a rise in these in recent history, and there's a lot in our community and other communities that are feeling for this, that are suffering because of it, and it's important that we talk about this rise in this activity. So again, that's going to be on the 18th of this month from 1 to 3 p.m., and it's going to be at the Lake Lansing Espresso Royale, 1500 West Lake Lansing Road.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
One Book, One Community is August 26th. Doors open at 5:45 p.m. at the Hannah Center. The author this year is Matthew Desmond, and the book is Evicted. And I'm looking forward to seeing lots of people there.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is the city manager's report. Mr. Lahannis.
Thank you, Your Honor.
City attorney's report.
Thank you, Mayor. I did deliver an attorney-client privilege communication to council, and I would ask council to, at the conclusion of this meeting, vote on whether to go to closed session to discuss that communication. Also, I did deliver the quarterly litigation status report, and that's been posted on the agenda.
I do have a question regarding that. Our labor cases are handled by a completely different attorney, correct?
Correct.
Can you give us, do you have any update on any of those cases? Particularly, I'm interested in, I know that we have a case involving a former employee there.
Yeah, Mr. Williams filed a litigation case against the city that was turned over to labor counsel. That was done in March 26th of what the complaint was filed. The labor counsel filed an answer on the city's behalf. They've gone through the scheduling conference that it's currently scheduled for trial in April of next year of 2020, but in the meantime, they're going through the discovery process.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the update. The next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. Back to you, Mr. Lahannis.
Yes, we have the following items on the consent agenda for council's consideration. Item 9, approve the following to boards and commissions. A, Tom Fehrenbach to the University Place Condominium Association. B, Tom Fehrenbach to the Albert Avenue Tower Condominium Association. C, Catherine Linehan to the University Student Commission for a full term ending September 30th, 2020. D, add-on Laura Scales to the Art Commission for a full term ending December 31st, 2021. 10, set a public hearing for September 10, 2019 to consider ordinance 1458, an ordinance to rezone the properties at 314, 328, 334, and 340 through 344 Evergreen Avenue from RM32 City Center Multiple Family Residential District to B3 City Center Commercial District. Item 11, introduce and refer to Planning Commission Ordinance 1469, an ordinance to allow for and regulate adult-use marijuana provisioning centers. Item 12, approve street closures from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. on December 7, 2019 for the Winter Glow Festival and authorize the use of amplified sound and regulation of vendors during the event. Item 13, approve the Water Resource Recovery Facility, WRRF, Emergency As Needed Electrical Contractor Services contract with Newkirk Electrical Associates and authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with them in the amount of up to $90,000. Item 14, approve George Lahannis as the officer delegate to the annual meeting of the Municipal Employees Retirement System on October 3rd through 4th, 2019. Item 15, approve street closures beginning at 2:30 p.m. on September 27, 2019 for the Michigan State University Homecoming Parade. Item 16, approve a resolution recognizing August 31st, 2019 as International Overdose Awareness Day. Item 17, approve a conditional Class 3 rental license at 1820 through 1822 Coolidge Road, allowing up to 2 unrelated persons or a family in each unit of the duplex. A condition of the issuance of the conditional rental license is the issuance of the certificate of occupancy upon completion of the dwelling. This is a duplex that is currently under construction. The owner is Sumbal Trust, Okamis, and the legal agent is Gunlam Subal, Okamis. Item 18, approve a conditional Class 3 rental license at 539 Glenmore 1C, allowing up to 2 unrelated persons or a family to occupy the condominium unit. The owner is Jeffrey Nyquist, East Lansing. Item 19, approve a conditional Class 3 rental license at 254 Durand, allowing up to 2 unrelated persons or a family to occupy the dwelling. A condition of the issuance of the rental license is an additional inspection to be completed after the current occupants have vacated the premises. Confirmation that the last 2 remaining violations are corrected and the open violation in the basement related to the height of a doorway and headroom in a hallway related to a prior inspection are resolved. The owner is JG and JW Investment Properties, LLC, East Lansing, and the legal agent is Community Resource Management Company, East Lansing. Item 20, approve a conditional Class 3 rental license at 710 Grove, allowing up to 2 unrelated persons or a family to occupy the dwelling. The owner is JG and JW Investment Properties, LLC, East Lansing, and the legal agent is Community Resource Management Company, East Lansing. Item 21, approve traffic control order number 481 for the placement and enforcement of a time-restricted parking zone on the north side of Collingwood Drive, east of Butterfield Drive, to facilitate student curbside school transportation. Item 22, approve the professional engineering services contract with Hubble, Roth, and Clark for the retention treatment basin and dewatering pump station improvement project in the amount of $68,000 and authorize the city manager to sign. Item 23, approve an agreement with Rowe Professional Services Company for the engineering services for the fiscal year 2020 major street improvements on Trowbridge Road and Forest Road in an amount not to exceed $181,437.63 and authorize the city manager to sign. Item 24, introduce and refer to the Planning Commission Ordinance 1468, an ordinance to rezone the properties at 710, 722, and 722.5 Grove Street from R2 medium density single-family residential to RM32 City Center multiple family residential. Those are all the items on the consent agenda for council's consideration.
Does anybody want any of these items moved to the business agenda? All right, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move approval of the consent agenda as read by the city manager.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Draheim, seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. Any discussion?
I have just
Go
a
ahead.
question about number 19, the conditional Class 3 license for 254 Durand. There's a bunch of conditions in the text here. Where do those appear in the documentation surrounding this application? Are they spelled out?
They would be spelled out as a condition of the license, so it would show up on the license.
Okay, all right, so we don't have to do anything that's not already done?
No, it'll be taken care of.
All right, thanks.
All right, anything else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on our agenda is item number 25, which is the Adams Outdoor v. City of East Lansing proposed settlement. I know Councilor Bokrin is here, I think, so. Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
And we have a copy of this proposal, and I don't know whether any of the council members have any questions of you that they might want to ask.
And I just want to make sure, as a result of discussions with Mr. Yaden and some input from council, there were 2 changes made to the original draft that I did forward to you, and I'm not sure if everybody has received.
I'm sure
it.
everybody has the same draft.
Okay. I don't know if you want me to go through this paragraph by paragraph or how you want me to do it.
Why don't we, if we have questions, we'll ask you of it, and then you can make a recommendation to us.
Certainly.
How's that? Go ahead.
So my question is that we had a settlement with this complainant once before about billboards in East Lansing, and so the question is, how is the city protected from future litigation over billboard placement? What went right this time that didn't go right the last time?
There were, let me answer it this way. We had, I think, 5 different mediation sessions trying to resolve this matter. And it went from they wanted billboards downtown to what you have before you now, which is billboards nowhere near downtown. The difference essentially between this and the previous agreement is that this specifies that the only place, unless there's a change in the ordinance, that billboards can be placed is what is specified in the ordinance, which is adjacent to limited access highway, and that term is specifically defined. Why this case originated, Mr. Altman, is because the city's, neither the zoning ordinance nor the sign ordinance defines limited access highway. I think most people would think it's a fairly self-defining term, but it turns out it's not. Michigan Department of Transportation defines it as a state trunk line highway. And that's what Adams was relying on to say that they should be able to place billboards on Grand River because it's a state trunk line. This agreement explicitly states what is a limited access highway and defines those by name and location. So that ambiguity is no longer in existence, and Adams understands that they are limited by the specific language of the ordinance as it's written. Now, there is a provision in here that if the ordinance is amended and billboards are allowed in the downtown area at some point, then Adams essentially has first right of refusal. But they also acknowledge that unless there is an amendment to the ordinance to allow that, they don't get billboards downtown.
And a follow-up, I wonder if you could just briefly summarize the 2 changes to the settlement agreement that happened.
Sure.
Just in case anybody saw a stale version.
Sure. The first is settlement agreements are between the parties. There's a lawsuit pending in the court. The court speaks through orders. We had prepared a separate stipulation in order to file with the court once both parties agree to the settlement agreement. The first change was we explicitly included a paragraph in the settlement agreement that directs the parties to instruct their attorneys to execute and file a stipulation dismissing the lawsuit with the court upon execution of the agreement. The second change is there was a question raised about paragraph 11, which states that the city has access to the rotation to place messages subject to availability. And the question was, what protection does the city have from Adams saying we have no availability? Adams' response was, we don't have 100% occupancy of any billboard, number one. Number two, They invited us to talk to any other municipality where they have this agreement. But number 3, in the specific change, is that the city has the right to audit Adams' occupancy statistics, if you will, in the event that the city is told that there is no occupancy available on a sign.
Thanks for pursuing that.
Very welcome. Thank you for bringing it up.
Anybody else with any questions? I've got a couple of sort of clarifications and questions that I'd like you to talk about. One of these is this agreement to allow the city to advertise on these billboards. In other words, probably the art festival and things like that. Can you just talk about the duration of that? What is the nature of that part of the agreement?
It's up to 32 weeks during the course of the year. And it's typically done in, as I understand it, in 2-week segments. I mean, it's not like they're going to give us a day because they need to arrange their lineup. But the city is entitled to up to 32 weeks of messaging under the terms of the agreement.
Okay. And the leases that are established in this agreement are 10-year leases.
Correct.
With a right of renewal. But there's also an accelerator in the value of the yearly payment on that. Is that correct? That there's a automatic increase that is built into this? What is that increase?
If you give me a moment, Mr. Mayor. Uh, 1.5% per year.
Okay, those are my only 2 questions for you. All right, is there a motion to approve the settlement as presented to us and authorize signature on the settlement?
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved by the Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Councilmember Byer. Any discussion? I just want to say a couple of things. One, thank you for the work you did on this, because this is an excellent result, in my opinion. I'll also say that whether everybody in the community remembers this or not, we have been involved in litigation with Adams Advertising many times over the years, and the city attorney's office spent almost 3 decades in litigation with them when we decided we were removing all the billboards from the city of East Lansing, under the terms of then state statute, which allowed us to amortize those out of existence. It was a long, hard fight, and the end result, the final appeal with regard to that, was resolved by leaving what is, in essence, are 2 billboards up at the point, which is where Grand River and Saginaw meet. Those are the only billboards in the city of East Lansing until we got this lawsuit. And when we had 425 agreements entered into with DeWitt Township, I believe there were some billboards that were up along 127. We ended up purchasing the property through tax foreclosure, and we ended up owning those 2 billboard sites, and the leases had run out. So this takes care of that issue as well. Those were Adams billboards. Increases the rental payments on these, and I think, from my standpoint, this is a very good result to potentially a very difficult litigation. So again, thanks for all the hard work that you did on this. Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And if I may, I mentioned that we were in 5 separate mediation sessions. Mayor Meadows was at each one of those and negotiated, was the primary negotiator, and frankly drove a very hard bargain. I didn't think we were going to end up where we did, and I think that's a credit to you, so thank you for your work.
Well, thanks for saying that, but I think it helps having Mike Bogren at the table, so let me just put it that way. All right, if there's no other discussion, then all in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is, on the business agenda, is item number 26, which is to authorize the city manager to sign a deed transferring remaining property interest back to the school district. Mr. Yaden, are you on this? Can you
Yes,
explain this, please?
Mayor. Quite some time ago, in 1968, the property was deeded to the city from the school in order to allow us to establish a well on the property. After that, we deeded the property to, or we deeded an easement in the property to the Water Meridian East Lansing Water Sewer Authority. When the property was transferred to us, the school reserved the surface rights to the property. So as long as they maintained it. So for the last 30 or so years or 40 years, they felt that they owned the property. They didn't even realize that the property wasn't owned by them. So during the title search and an effort to sell a portion of this property to a neighboring church, during the title search, it showed up that we had actually an interest in the property. Basically, the fee to the underground rights of the property remains with the city, but since we've deeded that away to the sewer authority, we don't really have much of a property interest left. The school district has asked that we deed that back to them so that they can proceed with their sale, and that's what this is for.
Okay. Any questions of Mr. Yaden? Go ahead.
This does not affect the functioning of the well.
No, it specifically reserves the well site and the easement granted by us to the sewer, to the water authority.
Okay. Any other question? Okay, is there a motion to authorize the city manager to sign the deed transferring that property interest back to the school district? It's been moved by Councilmember Graham, seconded by Councilmember Stevens. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on our agenda is item number 27, consideration of ordinance number 1466, an ordinance replacing the University Student Commission's National Panhellenic Council and Community Relations Coalition seats with at-large seats. Nicole, do you want to step up? Welcome to the microphone.
Thank you. So I just wanted to bring this to your attention because the National Panhellenic Council seat has been open, vacant for a couple of years in the USC, and in an attempt to fill that seat earlier on in the semester, we wanted to make this an at-large seat. And then earlier this year, Council also approved the removal of the CRC from the USC. That's the Community Relations Coalition from the University Student Commission, because the CRC does not exist anymore. So this is also just to put that into the code.
Okay. All right, any questions of Nicole? Go ahead.
Nicole, I assume this has happened, but I mean, efforts have been made to reach out to the Panhellenic Council and ask them to appoint someone to that. And
Yes, and we do also have a seat for both the MSU Panhellenic Council, which is often filled, and the National Panhellenic Council.
Okay.
And we still plan to invite the National Panhellenic Council to apply for the at-large position.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So with at-large seats in the University Student Commission, is there like a plan to reach out to student organizations that can disseminate that information on campus, or is this kind of going to be of our own volition?
Yes, we have Sue Webster from MSU who works at the University Student Commission as well, and we're actually meeting this week to go over our outreach plan for student organizations, and especially trying to target different clubs that maybe haven't been a part of the USC before,
Sure.
that represent a more diverse part of the student body.
That was actually going to be my follow-up, so
Yes.
good to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll just note that, almost from the time the University Student Commission was created, we've had trouble filling that National Panhellenic Council seat, even though we made effort after effort to prompt the them to nominate somebody to sit. So we can still do that, but this allows us to fill the seat now and actually have a body in there. So is there a motion to approve ordinance number 1466?
So moved.
It's been moved by Councilmember Draheim, seconded by Councilmember Stevens. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on our agenda is consideration of ordinance number 1460, an ordinance to amend the code of the City of East Lansing by adding a new section, which new section shall be designated as section 50-532 of Division 1, generally of Article 6, Business, Office, and Industrial Districts, and amending Section 50-793 of Division 6, East Village District of Chapter 50 zoning of the Code of the City of East Lansing to require universal design features and multiple family housing within business districts. Welcome to the microphone.
So this ordinance originates back to the Senior Commission recommendation in 2016. And at that time, they were asking for these standards to be applied to multiple family developments. And in doing so, an ordinance was developed and addressed exactly that, except only for purely multiple family districts. What this ordinance does is it tries to match their original intent and broaden that to all multiple family districts. So this would amend the business districts where multiple family districts or multiple family developments are allowed, and the East Village District. So it takes the exact same standards, it just applies it to those other zoning districts where multiple families are allowed. And generally, what the ordinance requires is constructing apartments with accessibility in mind, wider doorways, wider hallways, electrical control compliance, and so on. And so this really just kind of brings our whole code up to speed with regard to multiple families.
Any questions of David? Okay, this is a public hearing. If anybody is in the audience who wishes to address council on ordinance number 1460, please step up to the microphone. All right, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion to approve ordinance 1460?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by the Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Councilmember Byer. Any discussion? I think this is a logical extension of what we are already requiring elsewhere. So all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on our agenda is item number 29, which is consideration of a site plan and special use permit application request from American Business Investments to renovate and partially reconstruct the existing structure, including drive-through, for the property at 947 Trowbridge Road.
See which one will work here. Okay, so this ought to look familiar to you. In 2017, council approved almost the exact same site plan, and the issue here is that the site plan expired in 2018, and in doing so, the applicant needed to come back and go through the process again to make sure that the development is up to our current standards. So just very briefly, this is a proposal to redevelop the existing property, which was formerly a Quality Dairy store. It's about 2,500 square feet. They're proposing a coffee shop in roughly one half of it and future retail in the other half. It's proposed to have a drive-through. A variance was granted for those stacking spaces in July. That had also expired, so they had to go back to the ZBA for that as well. In the prior iteration, when council reviewed this, they had you had a condition that required a fence along the railroad right-of-way to discourage and prevent people from trying to cut across to the multimodal station. That is now included in the site plan. This also includes a coordination with the water main extension on Trowbridge. And with that, the Planning Commission recommended unanimously for approval.
Any other questions of David? No. Go ahead.
David, can you talk just a little bit about, whenever we are approving something with a drive-through, kind of idle time and backup time, and I'm looking particularly at their landscape plan and sort of, it looks like actually there's quite a few trees and shrubs, so I'm thinking about sort of people idling and particulates, and is there ever a discussion about that, or was there any conversation of that with the applicants, and what does this approval do to sort of control for any kind of backup of parking through the site and or onto Trowbridge?
Yeah, there was considerable discussion about the stacking spaces, if you will, for the drive-through, and whether they're providing for 6 that don't obstruct anything, but they have enough room to get 10 all the way to the road right of way of Trowbridge. So technically, they had to go for a variance in that sense. So from their perspective and their analysis, they don't think that in their past experience in other sites that they'll get to that point. Obviously, in other sites, we've seen differently, and that's hard to control. If the business becomes widely popular, it would be challenging to control. But from an idling perspective, of course, that's something we're all concerned about. But and how that affects landscaping, we have not had those discussions internally.
So I guess I'd like to recommend, not for this specific project, but in general, I think particularly in corridors like this that are busy and are likely to get that, maybe taking this as an example to the Commission on the Environment and just asking them for some future guidance for projects that come in with any kind of a drive-through, if they have any, on different things that we can do to kind of help address sort of very localized air quality things. I don't think it's always relevant for every drive-through, but there are some. In this particular quarter, I could very much envision off Trowbridge, highway traffic on and off, this being an issue. So I'd love just some future guidance from them.
Okay.
Buy electric cars.
Hmm?
Buy electric cars.
That might be their recommendation.
We circle around to that. So.
We always do. Right?
But I also think that's a really, whether it's this drive-through or any other drive-through.
Right.
I mean, you do wonder, you're all sitting there idling, and, this is, there is an environmental impact from that, so. This is a public hearing, so if there's anybody in the audience who wishes to address council on this matter, on the consideration of this site plan and approval, please step up to the microphone. Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the site plan and special use permit application request from American Business Investments to renovate and partially reconstruct the existing structure, including drive-through the property at 947 Trowbridge Road, along with the conditions that were placed on it by the Planning Commission?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Stevens, seconded by Councilmember Draheim. Any further discussion?
Mayor, could I just interject a point?
Sure.
I think the drive-through is for the coffee shop, correct? Correct. Is there anything in here that would limit it to that, or could they put the retail use as a drive-through?
Supposing a retail use would need a drive-through, but there's nothing in here that would limit it to the specific use. Of course, the standards for the drive-through stacking spaces would probably go down if it's not a restaurant.
Council may want to restrict that use, the drive-through, to the coffee shop use, since there's going to be a dual-use project. That's my only concern.
I'd be willing.
Do you happen to have an amendment, Lyman?
Yeah, I'd be willing to have a friendly amendment.
I'm kind of looking for it right now. But. Does language like, this would be a condition 14, language such as the drive-through may only be used for coffee shop use. Is that
Certainly.
good enough?
Well, correct.
Okay, that's a motion, or that's that would be a motion to amend the main motion, then.
Yes.
To add 14, to say that.
Did you make that motion and Eric seconded it?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Any discussion?
No.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. That's short and sweet.
That was the amendment.
That was the amendment. Now we're back to the main motion. And any further discussion on that? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thanks, Tom.
The next item on our agenda is item number 30, which is consideration of an application from Kodiak Land Arc LLC for site plan and special use permit approval for the property at the southwest corner of the intersection of Merritt Road and Park Lake Road. The applicant is proposing to construct 3 new buildings, including a 7,000 square foot medical marijuana provisioning center, a 4-story, 107-room hotel, and an 8,690 square foot retail strip center. Mr. Haywood.
Thank you. So let's see, we'll start with that. Okay, so as was mentioned, this is a special use permit for basically three of the uses requires a special use permit: the medical marijuana provisioning center, the drive-through, and the additional height for the hotel. This is the former Department of Public Works site. It's just over 6 acres. And they're proposing the 3 buildings, 7,000 square foot for a medical marijuana provisioning center, a 4-story hotel, 107 rooms. They show on their site plan that the flag on that's a Holiday Inn Express. And then a retail strip for just over 8,600 square feet, roughly divided into 5 suites, including a drive-through, showing 10 stacking spaces, so potentially it could serve a coffee shop. Their construction schedule is that the first building to be constructed would be the provisioning center building, and that would be roughly 6 months. And then the other 2 buildings, the retail and the hotel, would follow in succession but be built at the same time. During our review, we identified a couple of things that need to be included. One, which is already shown on the site plan, that being bicycle racks and the typical parking that you would see, but also parking for electric vehicles, which was not included as part of the staff analysis, but is a requirement from our recent adoption of the ordinance to require 1 space per 50 provided. So at just over 200, they would be required to have 4. So that would be a staff recommendation to add a condition to make sure that those are included.
Can I ask you said
Yeah.
something about the bike rack. I have that as a flag. So more
Yeah,
bike
bicycle
racks or
racks,
replacement of bike racks?
which are a little bit hard to see here, but they're grouped in 3 different, in each building,
Okay.
in front of each building. They meet our standards, so that was
So
not
that's a
included.
change to the condition, because the conditions only have installation of 1 bike rack. So
Does
are
it?
you saying you guys, staff has a change to that condition?
Yeah, that should be, let me pull up the,
At least 1 bicycles?
Correct.
no, that's-
Typo notwithstanding, it needs to be more than 1 bicycles. Yeah, I'm sorry, it's condition number 4. I just wasn't sure what the right number was.
that's what I'm pulling up here.
If we need to write that so that it is bicycle rack sufficient to install to accommodate number of bicycles as required by code, and you want to come up with that number later, I'm comfortable with
Yeah,
that.
so the staff report, it looks like hotels are not required to have any, but the provisioning center would be required to have 2. and the retail would be required to have 7. They have on their site plan, I believe, more than that on any one of those sites. I can't read it from there, I'll have to pull it up here.
There is some. You want to come up there?
Sure.
August 8th.
Good evening, City Council. Mike Bahura on behalf of the applicant. So I'm not the engineer, I'm their attorney, but I do know that I looked through this because it is hard to see, but even though the hotel did not require bike racks, there are some indicated on the site plan. It is, it's like 8 for the retail. Yeah. Go up here. 8 of them in front of the hotel, or 6. I can't tell if it's 6 or 8. I guess the point is there's bike racks at each building, for sure.
The buildings,
Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
So I've got it. On the site plan, it shows for the hotel, there are 6 out front, and for the provisioning center, there are 2 out front, and for the retail, there are 8 out front. So if you wanted to include that as a condition, we could include those numbers or required by code, but they're over bike
I
parked
would like
right
those
now.
numbers included as
Okay.
a change to condition 4.
Yeah.
Bike racks shall be installed
As shown on the site plan.
as shown on the site plan. Does that get us there, Tom?
The
revised.
The
The
revised.
revised site plan. Do I need to make that a motion?
We'll do that at the time we do the
And what was
motion.
the other one that we were supposed to also do?
Electric vehicles,
Oh, tab 4.
charging stations.
Got that.
And that one's going to be where? That's going to be
A new one, it's a new condition at the end.
so 28 or 26? 26. Okay.
And there's one last correction I think we need to make to the conditions, and that's the hours of operation. I think we list the hours of operation as 10 to 9, and they list their operations as 8 to 9, which is allowed by code. So we don't short them 2 hours, we should, if you approve.
Which one was that?
Number 21.
So it should be 8 to 9.
Right.
David, can I ask you another question?
Yeah.
Was this site plan, I know that it went to the Planning Commission, I know that Transportation Commission looked at it as well. Was this sent to the Environmental Commission, do you know?
I don't remember it going to them. We
Okay.
didn't receive a referral from them.
Okay. It is a former brownfield site. I think in practice, I'd like to see projects like this routinely going to the Environmental Commission, even for just advisory consent. Anytime there's a major development on infill or greenfield, I'd like them to at least have the opportunity to look at it and comment.
All right, any other recommendations from you, David?
No, that's it, other than to say that the Planning Commission was supportive unanimously for this project.
Aaron, you had a question?
This project came to us fairly quickly and in somewhat of an unorthodox way. Can you give us a rundown of the timeline from purchase agreement to now?
The purchase agreement, I wasn't that much involved with, so I'm not sure what the timing on that was, but I can get the timing for the process once we received it for the Planning Commission and such. I can do that.
Yeah, that's okay. Don't worry about it.
Okay. You want me to grab that?
Yeah, okay.
So we received their application on April 15th. The Planning Commission held their hearing in May 22nd and made their referral at the end of June 26th. And then, of course, it was council received it in mid-July, and here we are.
Okay, and then I had one other really quick thing. So we've seen with downtown, and this is more directed towards the applicants, we've seen with downtown and our businesses dealing with construction in their area, confusion in regards to local businesses that have been there for a really long time, and maybe a construction barrel up in an interesting spot, leading people to not know whether they can get to a place or not. We have a local business owner here today that was interested in the project and how it's going to, affect construction area. It would mean a lot for me, and I think other council members as well, if there was an open line of communication. Obviously, this isn't in our downtown area, but the local businesses are the lifeblood of East Lansing, and during construction, there's obviously some hardship. So having an open line of communication with that local business would be a very good thing from my end.
So I can make this commitment to you that we'll provide a point of contact, somebody that's available at least during normal business hours, and we'll have maybe a backup number if anything comes up kind of after hours.
Yeah.
I'm happy to also provide my number. We'll have probably 2 or 3 people that will be able to contact, one primary person and a couple of backups, but we agree. The last thing we want to do, we know it's still, the whole issue of medical marijuana is already, we know, a little controversial, but then throw the construction into it. The last thing we want to do is be bad neighbors and set a bad example from the beginning. So
yeah, and I was going to say, so the medical marijuana is
Yeah.
not necessarily a concern to me. Honestly, when you have construction, when you have new businesses
Sure.
going up, and there's possible delays or street closures or anything else,
Sure.
or just trucks running up and down the street, right?
Absolutely.
Issues come up, so
Yeah.
having an open line of
I'll
communication.
provide a number, a couple contact numbers that they'll be able to get a hold of somebody during business hours and then after business hours.
Thanks.
Sure.
This is for David, just since you brought it up. Was there anything unusual in the timing of the processing of this proposal, in your professional opinion?
I don't think so. I mean, let's see, April to,
Yep. Okay,
it's
thanks.
pretty close. I mean, there were some timing issues with the council agenda for July and August, which probably, normally it's 90 days start to finish on the best case scenario. So this is pretty close to that.
Thank you.
Hey, can you orient to the sketch that's up there, between Merritt Road, or there we go. I think there was, I don't know why I didn't notice that. So that's Merritt Road. So the provisioning center would be which one of these buildings?
Okay, so good question. So the provisioning center would be the one here on the left corner, the west side. That's the 7,000 square foot building here. The retail would be the building out toward the point, or the very northern building, and then the hotel would be the southern one.
All right, and the property is available to be the staging area for the construction of at least the provisioning center for sure, probably the hotel. Is that correct?
That is my understanding, that that's where everything will be staged, at
Yeah,
least
and
initially.
I'm only asking that question because I think the issue of closing Merritt Road, it doesn't just apply to you all, to Red Cedar Spirits. It applies to all the other businesses that are located along there. So we would have to approve that. And I think at some point, you're going to have to provide us with a plan for staging. So
Absolutely,
we'll take a look at it at that point in time.
definitely.
All right, this is a public hearing, and if anybody in the audience wish to address council on this particular item, please step up to the microphone. Diane? Welcome.
I'm Diane Holman, next door neighbor with Red Cedar Spirits. No, I've known a little bit this, although I have to say it hasn't been a very super public, very available. There hasn't been a lot of information out through all of this, so I've just heard really little tiny pieces of things coming out. So I appreciate more information in the future. But, I mean, I don't have any huge objections to it, although this is the first I've seen the plan view of anything. I saw some drawings, like 3D perspective drawings of so I knew there were the 3 different buildings. I guess what struck me when I saw this was it's so impermeable. It's like, we went through the whole brownfield thing with, lifting asphalt and making the next door. So, as green as possible. And we're even not parking in the front because in the the zoning board of appeals, because when we changed our zoning, we were office industrial park. So we were told, oh, you can't park in front because you should have 200-foot setback, all green. And, it was, when we came through next door, it was just green, green, green. I'm just surprised. I was just surprised. Whoa, that is almost, I guess there aren't any like percentages you have here in certain zoning categories for permeable versus impermeable surfaces on a site plan with a special use permit. I don't know, that just struck me. So where's all the water going? That's my question. No, but the main thing is, I guess you're all past that point, so. The main thing though is that, yeah, we would like, when Costco went in, we were really shut down for maybe a half a year through that. The way the roads were blocked, I mean, it was terrible signage for that, so I just would like courtesy that, and really care to allow us to continue operating. We were really pretty much shut down through that, and just think about us. That's it.
Thanks, Diane. And I'll note that given that I gave the promise that I buy all my booze in downtown East Lansing at the party store at Spartan Spirits from now on, I'm going to drink at your place always from now on to make sure that you don't go under.
And David, can you say where all the water's going?
Yeah, that's a really good question. If I can back out of this view a little bit, rather than try to reload the plans. So the site generally falls southeast, so from Merritt Road to Park Place and south. They are generally leveling the site out, so they're going to lower the kind of the northwest edge along Merritt Road and then raise the southeast end of the site. So the water would drain basically north to south. The detention basin is in the south portion of the site here. And then from there, from that detention pond, it would connect to a storm drain from there.
And where are the neighboring properties? The Spirits, where are the neighboring properties?
Red Cedar Spirits is immediately to the, I guess, southwest right here.
And all the way, that piece that goes all the way to Park Lake Road is our property, and then the full corner down to.
So will we be discharging water onto that property?
No, that would positively drain to a storm drain connection.
Okay, thanks.
You better look at that.
So just.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that Red Cedar Spirits did receive notices of the Planning Commission meetings and all the other meetings that were held with regard to this. All right, I just wanted.
If this doesn't work and water gets discharged onto private property, what do we do?
Well, if that happens, I don't know what the process is. I think the Public Works Director is here. Perhaps he can comment on his.
But I assume it's our responsibility to fix.
I mean, what we will do between now and the time that they submit for construction plans is make sure that their stormwater plans and their grading plans and all of their other site engineering are done to prevent that problem.
So I guess I'll ask the city attorney, if we do that, is it our responsibility to fix? If we discharge water onto private property, is it our responsibility to fix that?
Well, if we is one thing. If they do it,
I'm
is the
sorry,
question.
they. That's they in a permitted plan. Yeah, that's what I meant. Thank you. If they, in a plan that we permitted, discharge water into private property, what's the next step?
I don't believe that there's any law that says that if we issued a grading permit for somebody and it turned out that the water discharged onto a neighbor's property, that the city would be liable for that.
So what would be the next step then?
It would be a dispute between the property owners. But I don't believe the city would be automatically liable to correct that. Nothing would prevent the city from, working with the property owners to correct it. But.
I'm not quite finished. So are we, I know you want to jump in.
Nope.
Could we revoke a permit if that happened? Because the permit says the water has to drain into the drainage?
If it's a condition of a special use permit, yes.
Can we make it a condition?
It is in
Then we're good.
I mean, there's a condition in here about
The project will be designed and developed in accordance with all applicable state and local statutes, code, and regulations, and we prohibit that.
Okay.
And I'll just know that if this was like two people who live next door to each other, you cannot increase the drainage from your property onto another piece of property other than the normal, natural drainage that might exist there. And when you do that, that's called a trespass, and it is actionable in a court of law.
Yeah, I'm actually very sensitive to this, because this happened in my backyard, when my neighbors built a garage in their backyard. And I always have water in my backyard, but then I got a significant increase, so I just want to make sure when we watch the process that this tank is sufficient and the water goes where it's supposed to go and doesn't go onto anybody's property.
Yeah, the recommended number one, the first condition is final grading, soil erosion control, paving, utility plans, and for the site shall be approved by the city engineer.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, Scott House is here, you can comment first.
Also with
Up to you,
this,
Scott.
with this also, this will be subject to Ingham County Drain Commissioner's jurisdiction as well, because it discharges there, so there'll be increased rigor in looking at this site.
Okay.
Okay, any other individuals who want to address council on this?
Alice Drager for East Lansing Info. So maybe I'm missing something, but what I see when I click on fire preliminary review is good from Don Carter, Fire Marshal. Good morning, Dave. The prints themselves are illegible. I will want to see the site plan before commenting. So I don't see a fire review. Secondly, I don't see a construction staging plan, and my understanding of the code is it requires it, but maybe I'm wrong about that. Third is maybe the DEQ site is out of date, but I believe it lists this as a brownfield, and there doesn't seem to be any plan in here for cleaning up or containing it or anything, but maybe I'm missing that. And fourthly, I think it's safe to say that people really want to know why this property was listed on eBay with only approximately 12 interested parties being informed. If the city wanted to get top dollar on this land, why was nobody else told about it? It is clear that the city was not ashamed about advertising it as a medical marijuana provisioning center opportunity because that was in the eBay listing. We all know that this is a gold rush. We now see there's a hotel on here, which would seem to suggest that that substantially increases the value of the land as well. So it's not just medical marijuana, it's hotels, which is a big business right now. So I would love an answer to the question, perhaps from the city manager, why did the city tell only approximately 12 interested parties about this? Thanks.
All right, thank you for your comments. Anybody else?
Can I respond to a few of those concerns? I'm happy to address a few.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. I have one of the developers here with me also.
Hello.
But let me say this. As to the concerns about the value of the property, I would say this, the value of the property, I mean, the property had been sitting there vacant for how many years with no activity. Certainly, if we put a hotel on it, it's going to increase the value, but that's going to come at this development is an 8-figure development. It's not like this is just going to create value out of thin air. We're putting a lot of money into East Lansing and into this property. And if anybody else had wanted to put a hotel there in the past, it was certainly there, an opportunity was there for them. And then the staging, the reason why we staggered it to do the provisioning center, then the hotel, and kind of do it in phases is so that all the equipment can be staged on site, so there's no effect on the roads and on the neighboring businesses. And then as far as the environmental, I'll let Mike speak to that a little bit more. It's a little over my head, to be honest.
Mike Abdulnor with MHS Group. So we have engaged with environmental company TEC out of Madison Heights, Michigan. We've done all the environmental reports. We've submitted a due care plan to the state and also the BEA. So we've taken all the precautionary steps to make sure that everything is done properly.
All right, any questions of them? All right, thank you very much for your comments. And David, can you come up and answer a question again? We don't mention the DEQ in any of these conditions. And should we have a condition that provides that all appropriate permits and permissions from the State of Michigan Department of Environmental Quality will be received prior to construction?
I mean, we can certainly add that, and I mean, that would be a coverall.
Okay.
Tom, would that language suffice?
Tom, any suggestions?
No, that language is fine. I have some suggestions on some of the other conditions, though.
Go ahead.
Bob, can we get an answer to the fire review question?
The what review?
Fire review.
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that. I know that my recollection is that we clarified the plans, but we just never received comment. I can't explain why. I'd have to look back at our communications to see what transpired.
Well, doesn't the fire marshal approve the final construction?
Yeah, he certainly will review these once they come in as construction plans, so he'll have a final say at that time.
Okay, any other questions of David? No. Tom, you had some comments?
I just want to make sure that there's some of the conditions that are specific to the medical marijuana facility, and it's not necessarily spelled out in here. And so 12, it says they may not be operated out of a residence or residential structure. I'm assuming that means the medical marijuana facility may not be operated. 13, the consumption of alcohol, medical marijuana, or tobacco products on the premises is prohibited. I think that should be on the facility instead of the premises, because I think that restriction only applies to the medical marijuana facility and not the hotel and so forth. And then 21 is the same, the hours of operation. I think you were going to amend that from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m., but it should be the hours of operation for the facility must be set. It'd be silly to shut a hotel down at 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. So those are just to clarify. I mean, that's the intent of them. I just prefer that they're spelled out a little clearer.
So give me those numbers again. It was 12, 13?
12, 13, and 21.
Okay, and 21 we've already...
But I'm saying the hours of operation should be limited to for the
Yeah.
facility.
Okay. Okay, and... Think of it this way. Okay. Does anybody else wish to address council at this time?
So, I mean, I don't mean to be a nag all the time, but as I understand it, it's actually a condition of review that there be a proposed construction schedule and staging of the development. I don't see that in here. I don't know if I'm missing it, but we've heard from Red Cedar Spirits that they're concerned about this. I don't think it's unreasonable to be concerned about it, and I don't know why our planning department, frankly, is not requiring things like final fire review, construction staging, evidence of due care in terms of the DEQ. These are reasonable expectations, and it's nice of the applicant to answer the question, why didn't we get the most money? But that's not the question to the applicant, that's the question to the city. Why did we not advertise this thing? If we want to talk, when the city council's arguing over $7,000 here or there in the arts budget, and given how much this property went up in the last hour of the eBay auction, we could have paid for the folk festival.
David, do you have an answer on the staging requirement? Is that always a condition of approval?
Not normally, we don't include that as a standard item, but I can look to see how we could incorporate that.
Okay.
Or did you want me to address the marketing of the property?
Been addressed a lot of times.
Yep, already. Shall be provided.
But you're welcome to.
No, I don't want to spend the city council's time if you don't want me to, but I'm certainly prepared to. It's been a 15-year history, and I can go through it. But
I guess I would be interested in the history. The history of this is not obvious, and when you only tell one side of the story, then it gets a sort of distorted perspective. Right. So I think that having it.
Go ahead.
A broad summary would be
helpful. Especially since that allows us to write some stuff down.
Yeah.
So this goes all the way back to 2002, a vote of the East Lansing residents, August 6th, when the residents of East Lansing passed the sale of the property, 65% of the voters approving that proposal. 2003, the city made its first concerted effort to sell the property. 2003, over 15 years ago, with an RFP, request for proposals, and a sign was placed at the land site saying it was available for sale. 2007, the council approved a mixed-use redevelopment project for the site that never materialized. 2010, a second RFP process was put out for the entire site. At that point, it was the Working Bugs Spartan Technology that came in and purchased a part of the site, but not the more difficult or more challenging northern portion of the site that we're talking about here. That actually closed. Spartan Technology is obviously working and using that portion of the building for $350,000 purchase. 2016, the city received an unsolicited offer, because it had been available for sale continuously, to purchase the 6.4-acre parcel for $850,000. After they went through the council process, the applicant did their due care and found all the environmental challenges that were reasonably well known, and they decided that they needed a brownfield plan of $3 million to remediate those challenges, bad soils, environmental problems that were there, because of its use as a public works site. At that point, council was not interested in doing a brownfield at that level, and the site once again sat. No one at that time had any objection to the city council proceeding with someone soliciting an offer. No one said we shouldn't have accepted that $850,000 because there wasn't a new RFP given. We simply accepted it and moved forward. It could have been sold at that point very easily. Then council made the decision to allow the medical marijuana use there as a part of the overlay in 2018, which obviously changed people's interest. People who were looking in East Lansing for this use approached the city at that point and began making unsolicited offers again. These were coming in different formats, different expressions of interest, in order to try to have some sort of an orderly process and say, let's wait a minute, all of you just go put your final sort of offer in. The eBay decision was made to be able to do that in a very cost-efficient and somewhat fair way, where all these people who were just showing up at the door with offers could have an orderly process and make the bid and try to get the best value for the city. That occurred. The price for the eBay auction site was $150. An auction site, a true auction, would have been about $100,000. Typically 10% of the price is taken by the auctioneer. So all in all, I think that the small body of people who would be interested in that exact parcel of land, considering the environmental challenges, were known to the city, and they were the ones who approached the city to purchase it. It's been available for over 16 years with various efforts to sell it. So to pretend like this is some sort of a secret last-minute deal is just not true. 65% of the residents voted yes to this, and it's been sitting and waiting, and we've been making effort after effort. It was the council's good move to be able to allow that medical marijuana use that made the value and interest, again, sparked interest. A very difficult site to develop. That's the history.
Sparked interest, really?
I didn't do that on purpose.
Go ahead.
I just want to note that both those things can be true. I think it is a very common practice for cities to go out to a list of people who have expressed interest or to known developers in an area, particularly when there has been absolutely no interest in a property. When we zoned it this way, certainly that interest went up, and I would contend that because we used an auction format, that is actually why you saw the price bidding up towards the end. Now, in hindsight, do I wish we had more widely pushed it out and published it? I do. I think we can all acknowledge that. We are not perfect in this city. We do not always make decisions knowing every ripple effect of this, and I think in hindsight, we would have maybe, put it splashier on our website. But so I don't think, all of that evidence is that we have done a ton of due diligence on this and put this out there, but to imply that there was something, underhanded or nefarious is just false. It's just patently false. And so there's a difference between those things.
And I just want to add, it's a real shame. So people have been on the city's case for this property for years, that this was somehow a white elephant, and we weren't able to get rid of it and make that property something that we put to good use. And now, through creative zoning and thoughtful zoning, and also through creative approach to selling the property, we have a really good outcome here for the taxpayers, and we have a good outcome for people who need medical marijuana in the region. And to basically turn that on its head and turn it into a political football does a real disservice to the hard work that went into what's a really good outcome for the taxpayers. So I think it's just really important that we start saying this kind of thing more often. We do good work. Yeah, we should have put a press release on the city website and blasted one out to all sorts of people in case somebody had maybe $1.2 million in pocket change that they decided they would want to drop on this particular property in the spur of the moment. But we didn't do that, and it didn't matter because it wasn't going to change the value of this property or the outcome. So we'll do it next time. It's not going to change anything then. It's not going to change anything, wouldn't have changed anything here. So I think this is a great outcome, and I think it's just really important to make that very clear.
Anybody else? Go ahead.
So really quick question to the city manager. So with the mentioned environmental issues that this property's faced for a long time, is there any worry about this not going through the Environmental Commission?
No, there isn't. The issues of the environment are not contamination per se, like there's a plume under it or something of that nature.
Right.
It really is bad fill, bad soils, because back in the olden days, they would not necessarily have, right now, we would not have taken old concrete or old substance like that and dumped it onto a parcel to fill land. You put it in the right place. So I think that's the type of thing, is it's just poor fill because the site has been used as a public works site for 60 years. And because of that, so it's bad soils and environmental issues, but it is not true contamination. Unless Mr. House can say anything different to that. Is there anything that you'd add to that to correct it? Or is that a good summary of what this environmental situation is out there?
I don't have the information on me to really expand upon it. From my understanding, it was material buried over time on the site, more benign material.
I'll just add to that. I mean, I think we've made clear that in the future we want things like this. I'm totally comfortable with the fact that we haven't gotten their input on this one. I think it's important to do it going forward. I wish we would have had it here, but it wouldn't change where I'm looking at this. We have a requirement. We're going to amend it that they have to comply with all applicable state and local statutes. I'm going to make an amendment to that, which would demonstrate the due care agreement. So I think we can address it here without their input, but I think you're hearing from council that we want that to be a routine process.
Okay. Anybody else wish to address council on this? This is a public hearing. I'm closing the public hearing. Now we're back at council. Does anybody have any further questions of staff? Or is there a motion on that? Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah,
sorry.
Just one more consideration. I spoke with David about, there's nothing that restricts the use of the drive-through to not being part of the medical marijuana facility, so I don't know if council wants to consider that or not, but that's not one of the conditions in this, and I don't know whether council wants to approve that use for drive-throughs. That's an issue.
It's prohibited by state law, but if you want to address it.
In case state law changes.
And in our local ordinance as well.
I don't think so. I had David look at that to make sure. I thought it was as well, but.
Okay.
I'm not even seeing the drive-through here. What am I missing?
It's on their site plan, apparently.
Oh, so we would add, you're suggesting that we add a condition?
If council wants to add that as a condition if the state law ever changes.
Well, I'll get us going. I move approval of a site plan and special use permit for the property at the southwest corner of the intersection of Merritt Road and Park Lake Road to construct 3 new buildings, including a 7,000 square foot medical marijuana provisioning center, a 4-story, 107-room hotel, and an 8,690 square foot retail strip center.
Second.
Okay, the motion is made by Councilmember Draheim, seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. Discussion. Amendments. Want to start with the amendments?
Yeah.
Okay, go.
We'll probably end up jumping around, but I'll start with amendment number 4. Bike racks shall be installed. We had talked about that saying as shown on the revised site plan.
Okay.
I think I feel more comfortable actually stating the number and the total number, but Tom, let me just ask you that question. Because they're at different buildings, does that, if we just say
What is it?
the revised
Total.
site, the total number is,
Total required would be 9.
Total offered, total in the site plan.
Total offered would be 16.
so 16.
16 are on the site plan.
Okay, so bike racks, so change number 4 to read, 16 bike racks shall be installed as shown on the revised site plan
Second.
dated. Do we need the date of the revised site plan? No.
You said 16 bike racks. Did you mean bike racks
Bike
installed
racks to
sufficient
accommodate 16 bicycles, excuse me. Thank you. Yeah, 16 bike racks. would be a
Also,
lot.
just as a point of order, if I may interrupt, your initial motion didn't say subject to the
Thank you.
conditions of the site plan.
Could I
so
offer a
you want-
friendly amendment to my initial
Clarify that.
motion?
Yes.
Yes.
And that has been accepted by
Okay.
your seconder. And now you have the motion, which I understand is
I
bike
didn't make my friendly
racks
amendment. Do I need to?
to accommodate 16 bicycles shall be installed as shown on the revised site plan. Is that it?
Correct, but do I need to state a friendly amendment? Did I state that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, just that it includes the conditions? Okay.
That includes the conditions as set forth in the recommendation from the Planning Commission.
Okay, that is my motion. That is my friendly amendment.
Okay.
Okay, and then yes, changing number 4, bike racks shall be installed sufficient to accommodate at least 16 bicycles as shown on the revised site plan.
And I seconded that. Any discussion on that one? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Do you have another amendment?
I do. Number 9, the project shall be designed and developed in accordance with all applicable state and local statutes, codes, and regulation. Prior to commencement of construction, prior to construction, applicant will provide the city with copies of all applicable state permits and approvals related to brownfield remediation and due care requirements. Is that, it's kind of wordy. You want to help me, Tom?
No,
Is
that's
that-
fine.
Is that okay? All
I'll
right.
second that. Any discussion on that one?
I have a question, actually. Does the wording of number 9 as it stands, does it cover those particular permissions from the DEQ?
It would if it's.
I would say it
applicable
would, but
state.
it's nice to
It's a brown.
emphasize.
And I'm fine making it clearer than it is, but I just want to make clear on the record that we didn't leave anything out of the commission, of the
Gotcha.
conditions, right? Because we hear these things all the time, and in fact, we didn't leave anything out. The condition covers the situation we're trying
It's
to.
covered now, and all my amendment is doing is saying that we will actually have copies of those, and I would just add, this isn't a condition here, but from the city's perspective, and I think we do this for a lot of our projects, I like to see those go up on the website when we have our project summaries, like any environmental permits from the state. I just like that to be public record.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Got another?
No. I
No,
might,
not
but-
right down. Okay.
I mean, I do, but I think you've
So
got
we
the other
did
ones.
4 and 9. Anybody else? Well, go ahead, Eric.
I'll move to add a new condition number 26 to read, applicant shall install and maintain 4 electric vehicle charging stations as required by city code.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Yes.
Going in. Since we don't have those on the site plan, do you want to designate where those might be?
I'll leave it to them.
Okay.
I think it makes sense to have them have the flexibility, because that's something that we've allowed previous applicants to do.
Okay, but there's 3 different buildings here. That's why I'm asking. So that, there could be people at the hotel that maybe all 4 are over at the provisioning center or something like that.
All sorts of ways to get charged up.
Usually takes longer than a toke to charge a car anyways.
I'm not
fine.
going to ask how you know that.
I've read.
I'm fine leaving
With the
the
language?
applicant
Okay,
with
that's
the
good.
language. There may be economies to having them all be in one place, and that's fine with me if they want to realize
Okay, I
it.
second that motion then. All right, any further discussion on that? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. That was 26. All right, Tom also mentioned 12 as a change to sort of fill in the word "they." So we're removing, I'll move to remove the word "they," and in the place of "they," say a medical marijuana provisioning center. So it reads, a medical marijuana provisioning center may not be operated out of a residence or a residential structure.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Then we had item number 21, I think, which I'll move an amendment to that so that it reads, the hours of operation of the provisioning center must be set between 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. Monday through Sunday.
Second.
That's been moved and seconded by Councilmember Stevens. Any discussion on that one? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
And then we had
20
consumption.
27, right? A new one, or no?
No, item number 13, I believe. I'll make an amendment to state the consumption of alcohol, medical marijuana, or tobacco products on the premises of the medical marijuana provisioning center or facility is prohibited.
Second. All right, any discussion on that one? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Then we talked about having a item 27 that would read, prior to commencing construction, the applicant shall have received all permissions and approvals required by the DEQ, but I think that's
That was the
yours
amendment
now.
together.
Then a potential item number 28, which would be construction staging plan shall be provided prior to the commencement of construction. David, do you think that's covered in any of the existing language?
I don't think so. It's probably wise to add that specifically if you want.
All right, then I'll move, we add an item 27, which reads, a construction staging plan shall be provided prior to staff prior to the commencement of construction. Go ahead. Oh, we have to have a second first.
Second.
Second.
And that's
Go ahead.
example 7.
Yep. 27.
My question is, do we normally require that for equivalent projects? For example, on Trowbridge Road, because there would have been similar sorts of issues there with the new hotel in Spring Hill Suites.
I don't have that history in the top of my mind.
Can anyone else address whether that's something that we normally require, construction staging plan?
It's a good idea. Aware of that. The construction staging we required in the past.
certainly seen them and viewed them, but I don't feel like I've seen them at time.
Yeah, I mean, it's more for the, I think we've had one business owner who indicated that she'd be interested in knowing how that's going to be done. I don't see a problem with it. It's pretty easy to do.
A question for the applicant, if I may.
Oh, yeah.
Would this be onerous in any way to provide the staging plans before construction?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay.
We were planning on doing that anyways.
Okay. All right.
So, well, you can make that a condition, that's not a problem.
All right, thank you.
Go ahead.
Again, I don't want to make this a condition because I think we're covering it in that, but I'll just sort of want to give a directive to staff to make sure that maybe we're providing those plans, not only publicly on our website, but perhaps providing them to adjacent property owners so that they're kept in the loop of sort of what that staging area is going to look like and have some expectations.
Okay. All right, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And then, an item 28, which the medical marijuana provision center shall not have a drive-through.
I'll make a second.
Okay. Any discussion on that? Go ahead.
I don't necessarily want to limit them from that if state law changes. We haven't had that discussion locally. It's not part of our ordinance. I'm not sure why we would tack that on here unless there's a clear reason for it.
There's not a drive-through indicated on here, is there?
There is on the.
Oh, on the retail side, but not on the, like, they aren't proposing a drive-through on the medical marijuana.
No, but as Tom said.
Oh, you're just saying it's possible.
Well,
Gotcha.
I also understand Mayor Pro Tem's point. I mean, if we haven't had that discussion on it, it's been, preempted by state law, but we haven't said anything, and we've been very clear that we do not authorize the consumption, driving, or using a vehicle. But, I mean, if we really do treat this as medicine, maybe that conversation eventually happens in the state level, so.
Well, just, how about if we do a friendly amendment, the MMPs, the medical marijuana provisions shall not have a drive-through unless authorized by state law. How's that?
Then why are we doing it?
Well, right, I mean, I think that's,
Why
I
don't
think
we
this
leave
is,
it out?
yeah, I think this is
Leave it out?
only in the case of a
Okay,
sale
then
change.
there is a second here, though, so we need a second to be taken out.
Second.
Okay. All right. Then
Okay,
I'll
what did you
withdraw the
second that
motion.
amendment, that friendly?
Yeah, he originally.
He's a minus
did.
second.
So we took it out.
All right,
So
withdrew the motion.
Okay.
we'll withdraw the motion. Anything else on this? Tom,
Should we-
anything you recommend?
I don't have anything further.
All right,
I
go
just
ahead.
want to, I just have a clarifying question. When I read condition number 9 about applicable state and local statutes, codes, and regulations, I read that as encompassing the requirements of the fire chief signing off on these. But Tom, do we need to be deliberate there?
That was my question.
Do we need to in any way address those comments? I mean, under both our state and our local requirements, like, that happens and it is required as part of this.
I don't have our local provisions in front of me at this moment. I do believe they reference review of the fire official. The details of that aren't specified in the code, to my recollection, as to the level of review that's required.
Do you think it would be a benefit then to add a condition along the lines of our fire review? Considering we did not receive one.
I mean, my only hesitation with that is if we're gonna do that, then I think that needs to be a policy. We need to change that for all, like, I don't wanna get into this just because we had somebody stand up and say that. Like, I always read our condition 9 as doing that, and our staff making sure that they are complying with all state laws. And I feel more comfortable that way. If we want to change our policy because we feel like for some reason the timeline of this or the process of this isn't being articulated or isn't being transparent enough, then I guess I'm happy to have that conversation. But you know what I'm saying? Like, and maybe it's not. Maybe this is the case we want to examine
So
it.
the presumption that because somebody stands up at the podium and says that bothers us, that it actually bothers us, is what I question. And I wouldn't bring this up at all. I would leave it to the way we normally do it. We have not ever had an issue with this. I trust our planning department and our fire
Yeah.
department to take care of it, so I don't think we need to do anything else.
Okay. Then, if there's nothing else, then we are back to the main motion as amended. Any further discussion on the main motion as amended?
I'll just ask our city manager and staff that is here. We've had a good amount of amendments and a lot of discussion around this. Are we comfortable with moving forward on the site plan as amended several times?
I'll just note the site plan wasn't amended.
Sorry.
Just the conditions, so, okay.
Yeah, motion is amended.
Can we just summarize and state we are at 28 conditions now, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, any, yeah, 26, 27.
No, I don't believe, because the 28.
Oh, no, you
were-
withdrew
Yeah.
27,
Yeah.
yeah.
Through 28.
27.
That's 27. That's what I'm saying.
Okay,
I'm glad you made that clear.
all right, we're back.
I know. I'm like, yeah, okay.
We're back to the main motion as amended. Any further discussion? Anybody?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I just want to say again, I think this is a great outcome for the taxpayers, and we've been trying to unload this property for a decade and a half. And I just want to make sure that everybody understands that this was a product of thoughtful, creative policymaking at multiple levels. And I want to thank everybody who was involved in bringing it to this point. And I also want to echo Ruth's point. We can't get trapped into making policy here because people who don't understand policies make comments from the podium. That's a mistake, and we need to guard. Well, that's what I'm saying. We need to guard against that because it's a mistake.
Anybody else?
Just say, on the fire review portion, I don't think asking the question hurts, especially if we're asking staff specifically, do you think that this is something that we need to be concerned about?
But you didn't ask the question, Aaron. And if it was a question you were concerned about, you should have asked it.
I asked
No,
George
you're not
whether or not.
asking. You're just a conduit, which is quite irritating.
All right, that's enough of that. All right, let's,
Sorry.
let's
I'm sick of it.
stick to the motion. I do have a couple of final comments I just want to make going forward, because I agree with exactly what Councilmember Draheim said a little bit earlier. Yeah, everybody on council, and with 20/20 hindsight, says, yeah, gee whiz, we should have put out a press release about the sale of the Merritt Road property and the fact that somebody can jump on eBay and make a bid on it. It didn't happen. So why are we even talking about it? The real issue is whether we got the result here that was an excellent result for the people of the city of East Lansing. We have a property that in 2016 we approved the sale of. And they did an environmental assessment and walked away from the project at $850,000. They did it because there's $3.5 million of cleanup that is required on that site, depending on the nature of the construction and everything else. And the property was put on eBay as is. We don't have a brownfield plan that's coming to us. There's no brownfield plan associated with it. And in the cleanup costs that are necessary to construct this project, which I believe are pretty substantial, are costs that are going to be borne by the purchaser of the property. You know, I don't know how much longer we would have held onto this property with $3.5 million worth of environmental contamination cleanup on it. And I realize that it is, as the city manager mentioned, that it isn't like we dumped a TCB on here, or that we have substantial cancer-causing contaminants on this property. But I do remember that we had to clean up the Abbott Road Park, where we did dump tons of construction materials over a number of years, and it was extremely costly for the city when we did that. And so this is not going to be cheap. And it does mean that the value of the property was impacted by the environmental contamination. As I understand it anyway, every individual organization that made a bid on this requested through FOIA a copy of that environmental assessment and took it into account in making their bids. And I also agree with Councilmember Draheim. Of course, at the end of a auction, you see the bids go up. I mean, I don't know what other auction anybody's ever been to, but unless nobody wants what's up there, the bids go up at the very end because people have already decided they want to try to get this property. So I'm very comfortable with the site. In fact, I'm excited about the site plan because this is way more than I expected and will be of greater value to the citizens of East Lansing with regard to the taxes, both the income taxes, the individuals will be employed there, the the value of the property and the sales that will take place there. So I'm really actually happy with how this turned out. So that's my comment on it. Anybody else? All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. And I believe that is,
Closed session.
that's it for tonight, right?
Closed session.
We need to make it.
Oh, yeah, closed session. So I need a motion to go into closed session to consult with our city attorney on a matter which is,
Regarding an attorney-client privileged communication.
okay. And is there a second? And a motion? You moved?
Did you move it, or did you?
No, no,
ask
you
me to
moved
second?
it.
So moved.
Councilmember Stevens moved it, Mayor Pro Tem seconded, and you need a roll call vote on this.
Councilmember Byer?
Yes?
Councilmember Graham?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens? Yes. Mayor Pro Tem Holman?
Yes.
Mayor Miller?
Yes. And we will only return to regular session to adjourn from regular session.
So before I retire from council, I'm voting no on one of it.